Hello and welcome to Focus on Africa. I'm Zuhura Yunus. Our top stories. It has been welcomed by many in Africa, but when will it be rolled out? We have the latest on the malaria vaccine. Tanzanian-born novelist Abdul Razak Gurna awarded the 2021 Nobel Prize for Literature. Also in the program, happy birthday Tutu. As he celebrates his 90th birthday today, we reflect on the legacy of Archbishop Desmond Tutu in South Africa.
He has endowed this country with the gift of courage, speaking truth to power, speaking up for those that are downtrodden.
And in sport, the road to Qatar 2022 continues as more Africa World Cup qualifiers take place today. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The head of the World Health Organization has described the approval of the first vaccine against malaria as a historic moment. The vaccine, developed by the British pharmaceutical firm GlaxoSmithKline, will be distributed primarily across much of Africa. The treatment requires 4 doses to be effective. During large-scale trials in Ghana, Kenya and Malawi, the vaccine reduced hospital admissions for severe malaria by 30%. The disease kills more than 400,000 people a year. The BBC's Patience Atuhaire in Kampala has been looking at infection rates in East Africa and how people have welcomed the news.
Little Amina is just a year old, but this is the second time she's had malaria. She was hospitalized 2 days ago with a high fever, vomiting and diarrhea. And though she's now getting better, her mother has hardly had any rest.
It affects me too as a parent. I cannot be happy when my baby is sick. You lose time and money because you cannot work. I must stay here and care for the baby.
At this government-run children's outpatient clinic in Kampala, more than 50 cases of malaria have been recorded in the last 3 months.
Low-income, flood-prone neighborhoods bear a huge burden of malaria infections. The mosquitoes that transmit the disease breed in the stagnant water and garbage.
Across the continent, an estimated 260,000 children under the age of 5 die of malaria every year. Uganda will soon add the malaria vaccine to its highly successful children's immunization program.
So these 4 doses, including the 4th booster at about 3 years, fits very well in our existing schedule. We just need to do small adjustments. But first we need to have some quick decisions. How do we roll it out? Do we go to all eligible at the same time, or we prioritize very high burden areas?
In Tanzania, over 90% of the population is at risk of malaria. The country hopes that the vaccine could help tackle the problem even in the remotest regions where previous health programs have not been effective.
And having a vaccine as an additional tool to fight malaria is a great addition. There are certain places which current tools that are being used are very hard to reach. For example, there are certain places where you cannot get bed nets and so forth. So having vaccine, it will be a great addition in the arsenal of tools against malaria.
And in Somalia, malaria is an additional stress on a health system already struggling with the effects of insecurity. So for families in other countries across East Africa with a similar need to ease the burden on their healthcare systems, news of this malaria vaccine brings great hope for the future of the region's children. Patience Atuhaire, BBC News, Kampala.
I'm joined now by Dr. Kezia Mam, Program Manager at Ghana's National Malaria Control Program. Welcome, Dr. Kezia. How significant a breakthrough is this, considering how deadly malaria is?
Thank you very much for having me. This is indeed significant for us. If you consider the number of cases that we see in our country, our outpatient department is seeing about 10 million cases of suspected malaria in a year, and we are recording around 400,000 malaria admissions in our health facilities. So a reduction of 30%, which will happen if we roll out this vaccine, is very significant.
So is this vaccine effective for all types of malaria?
Yes, currently the vaccine is effective for all types of malaria because in the trials and in the pilot implementation, we did not discriminate.
So as you are in Ghana, what's next for Ghana? What will rollout of this vaccine look like?
So generally, just like other vaccines, when they become available, the Ministry of Health sets up a technical committee involving the Food and Drugs Authority, the Ghana Health Service, researchers, and they all sit around the table and look at things around logistics, finances, and approach, and then a decision will be taken. So once the global community have the discussions around these logistics and the availability of vaccines, I believe my country's ministry will also do the same thing, and then we'll draw up a roadmap for the way forward.
Talking about the adults, are you worried that they might be left behind as this vaccine is for children?
Absolutely not. I'm quite happy with what we saw in the pilot implementation. You know, generally adults are the one who take care of their children when they are sick. So they are happy that we are going to see less of their children sick, less numbers sick. And for that matter, they don't have to spend so much money and so much time taking care of them. So even though directly they won't be receiving the vaccines, indirectly the adults will be benefiting, and they are quite happy from what we saw during the pilot implementation.
How did the parents respond to the trials? Was there any vaccine hesitancy, or were they generally very keen?
So initially, before we started the rollouts, there was a lot of discussion around vaccine hesitancy. Just like any other vaccine that you have yet to roll out, people were worried that was this really going to give our children some protection. But it's been great. If you look at the coverages that we achieved, between 74% and 92% across the 3 countries that we piloted, it is a great achievement for a vaccine that is now coming onto the market. So they've welcomed this, and we are looking forward to seeing greater things as we move on.
Very briefly, Doctor, how safe and effective is it?
So the studies have shown that this vaccine is quite safe. The safety signals that we had in the pilot in the trial that we were worried about didn't become a problem. In fact, it's shown that there is no association between the vaccine and these safety signals like meningitis and others that we're worried about. So we are happy, and we believe that this vaccine is safe. In terms of efficacy, you've already mentioned about 30% of health hospitalization due to severe malaria were cut. 7% of all-cause death, excluding injuries, were cut, and 21% of malaria-positive admissions were cut. And those are huge figures that we are dealing with.
Thank you very much, Program Manager at Ghana's National Malarial Control Program, Dr. Keziah Mam. And to Sweden now, where an African writer has made history. Abdulrazak Gurna has become the first Tanzanian to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in a ceremony in the capital, Stockholm. He's the first Black African author to have won the award since Wole Soyinka in 1986. He will receive a gold medal and 10 million Swedish krona. That's more than $1 million. Abdulrazak Gurna, who writes in English, was born on the island of Zanzibar and arrived in England as a refugee at the end of the 1960s. His early books, including Pilgrim's Way, consider life as a migrant in the UK. He now lives in Britain. Mr. Gurna told the BBC it was great that the award had been won by a writer from Africa, and he was still taking it in. In recent years, the Academy has been criticized for giving the Nobel Prize mostly to male writers from Europe and America. It was a moment dubbed Nigeria's Arab Spring, when tens of thousands of young Nigerians took to the streets to protest against police brutality after a video went viral of a man allegedly being killed by the country's special anti-robbery squad. The hashtag #EndSARS movement rocked the country for 2 weeks and saw Nigerians at home and abroad galvanize into action. A year on from when the protest started, what's happened? Shortly after the government agreed to disband SARS and set up judicial panels of inquiry to investigate the widespread allegations of abuse by officers. However, many questions will remain as to what happened on the night military allegedly opened fire on protesters at the Lekki toll gate. The government ordered each of Nigeria's 36 states, along with the capital, to look into the abuses. Only 31 complied, and those that did have been criticized for a lack of transparency. I'm joined now by Mayeni Jones in Lagos. Mayeni, it has been a year now. Are those who took part in the protests happy with how things have turned out?
You know, I think in the immediate aftermath of EndSARS, people were angry and galvanized, particularly the protest your viewers will remember ended with the shooting of protesters at the Lekki toll gate by members of the armed forces. The government has always denied that any protesters were hurt during that shooting, but a lot of non-Nigerians felt kind of energized. They wanted to organize themselves for the 2023 presidential elections and change things in the country for good. Since then, there has been a lot of frustration. A lot of young people we've spoken to are disappointed by how little has changed a year on. You'll remember that they had 5 key demands, which included better pay for the police, included psychological assessments for former SARS members, and it also included justice for victims of SARS abuses. They particularly wanted to see prosecutions of police officers. Unfortunately, a year on, many of the panels of inquiry haven't published their findings to the public. As far as we're aware, there's been no successful prosecution of any SARS officers, so a lot of those demands have not been met.
So what has come out of it then?
So since the shooting at the Lekki toll gates, there was a panel of inquiry set up in Lagos. Its remit was to investigate what happened on that night. It's now been suspended. We're not sure when it's going to be relaunched. A lot of things came out of it, some really horrific stories from victims of SARS abuse. But one of the things that came out most recently is a pathologist appeared in front of the panel and said that about 99 bodies had been submitted to a morgue in Lagos in the week following the SARS protest. He reportedly claimed that only 3 of those bodies came from the toll gates. This is something that many protesters dispute. They say a much higher number of people were killed on that day. But I think what's most frustrating for a lot of Nigerians is that we simply don't know. Amnesty International says about 12 people died, not just at Lekki, but at another site in Lagos. And it seems now that perhaps some of those victims will never get justice and will never really know what happened to them.
Thank you very much, Mayeni Jones, our correspondent in Lagos. To South Africa now, where events were held to mark the 90th birthday of the Nobel Peace Prize winner Desmond Tutu. He attended a service at St. George's Cathedral in Cape Town, where he served as the country's first black archbishop from the 1980s. The Dalai Lama and Graça Machel, the widow of the late President Nelson Mandela, are among those due to take part in an online lecture in his honor. The Nobel Peace Prize winner was at the forefront of South Africa's anti-apartheid struggle, and over the decades since democracy, he has continued his work as a human rights activist. But what does his legacy mean to South Africans today? Pumza Filani reports from Johannesburg.
Tribute for South Africa's Archbishop Desmond Tutu. He turns 90 today, and Cape Town-based artist Brian Rolfe has come to remove a racist slur that was written on Mr. Tutu's mural last month. The writing angered many in the country, but it's still not known who did it or why. But for the artist, the restoration is a small token of appreciation for a man who has spent most of his life serving the people of South Africa.
For me, he just represents somebody that spoke his mind, fought for human rights, but at the same time he's just this absolutely bubbly, happy person. When he communicates, he has this amazing sense of humor. He's a person that really celebrates life.
Here in Duduza Township outside Johannesburg, his role in the fight against apartheid has not been forgotten. During the late 1980s, like many communities across South Africa, Duduza was a hotbed of violent and deadly protests. Desmond Tutu frequently visited such townships to offer comfort and guidance to grieving families. It was during a funeral service on this sports field that Archbishop Desmond Tutu came across a man who was being attacked. The crowd accused him of being a spy for the apartheid government and they wanted to kill him. This had become the norm for people who were seen as traitors. Seeing what was about to happen, he stepped in. Using his own body as a shield, he pleaded for the crowd to show mercy. And eventually they did. It's this courage that he's still celebrated for.
Desmond Tutu worked really hard on that day. If he hadn't been there, things would have been much worse.
At an Anglican church in Cape Town, Tutu's birthday is a chance to reflect on his legacy.
He has endowed this country with the gift of courage, speaking truth to power, speaking up for those that are downtrodden, the marginalized.
The life of Desmond Tutu is a reminder of how civil society can help to bring change. It's a celebration of how one man stepped out from behind a church pulpit, at times risking his life, and made a difference in the lives of ordinary South Africans. Pumza Fihlani, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Still to come, Mimi will have all latest as the Africa World Cup qualifiers are underway. See you after the break. Welcome back. In the past 2 days, investors and representatives from 192 countries participating in the World Expo in Dubai have focused on the issue of the green economy. The World Green Economy Summit has tried to find ways to help nations affected by climate change and have little responsibility for this crisis, many of them from Africa. I'm joined now by Pierre-Antoine Denis, who is at Expo for us. Pierre, did something come out of this summit?
Well, Zuhura, of course, what came out of this is the range of innovations and technologies that we have in our power to make sure that we transition into this green economy. Of course, Zuhura, and to our dear viewers, this is a term that we're going to hear a lot, because from now on until the COP26, this is all about how we transition our economies into a low-carbon, resource-efficient one. And there are many ways to do this. But one example that is very interesting is Namibia, who aims to be a leader in the green economy, although not a nation that we hear about too much. The ministers of energy and mines that I spoke with earlier told me that it is very important to hop on that trend now and to develop and enhance that technology, the different technologies that they're using to promote and diversify their own economy.
We have commitments that we've made, not only because of not because we're actually polluters or anything, but simply because that's the future. That's the future. And therefore, it makes sense for us to do that, not only because of the climate issues, but also economic-wise. It really have got economic potential for us actually to start with new industries. You're going to create new jobs, which we didn't have. You see now the climate change issues, like it's all in good for one country to say we want to do that. The whole issue of climate change is really going to be managed only if all of us are going to do that.
Interesting you're talking about cooperation. How is it going within Southern Africa? Because South Africa is emitting a lot, really dependent on coal.
When we become the hub for hydrogen productions, that's going to help not only Namibia. The market is developing within the whole regions, and therefore even before we think about exporting this to other continents, obviously we have got right next to us, we got a lot of market that can be developing using green hydrogen. This is not a market for Namibia. I mean, in fact, Namibia will probably really use just a small fraction of that, but it's really, really being done for the region and for globally. In fact, you'll be surprised that the interest we've got, it's all over. We have got Australians who are actually interested, but the Europeans who are interested, you've got the Americans who are interested, simply because of the existence of the resource that we have got. So certainly, I think the collaboration within the region is very, very important. And we have already got those discussions to say, how can we, as Namibia, when we become this hub, how does that also then impact on the economies of the region?
Climate finance at the moment is very, very small when it comes to African countries. How do we enhance that? How do we improve that?
When we were in the US, for example, some of the US government entities, they said, look, the money is available there, actually.
Well, there we have it, the Namibia Energy Minister talking to me earlier about how Namibia can actually be an example and an example to follow into this transition to greener, more efficient economies for our future in Africa and in the rest of the world.
Thanks very much, Pierre-Antoine, all the way from Dubai. And now with Mimi, with sports.
Thank you very much, Zuhura. And there are more qualifiers for the 2022 World Cup continuing in Africa, 8 in total today. Benin went top of Group J after a 1-0 win over Tanzania the earlier matches. Steve Mounier with the only goal of the game. DR Congo goes second in the group. They beat Madagascar 2-0. And Cape Verde scored in injury time to make it 2-1 against Liberia. That means they are now 2 points behind group leaders Nigeria, who are currently playing against Central African Republic. That is goalless, just a few minutes left in that. Later, Mali play Kenya. Kenya's coach talks about quality in his team.
Most important is that we play good. So why it is good? Because you can win a match by luck, but in long term you need to have a good base and playing really football. Therefore the main point will be for us to play really good football tomorrow and to show that we are able to play this also against top teams. And then everybody will understand that we have a good future, because we have a lot of young players here who are 20, 90, 80. So, and I believe in them, and I believe in the future of the Kenyan national team.
And the other tie that kicks off later is Tunisia, who play Mauritania. They top Group B of the World Cup qualifiers on 6 points, with Zambia and Equatorial Guinea both on 3 points in second and third place, respectively. Their opponents, Mauritania, sit in fourth place with 2 defeats.
It's an important match against an opponent with whom we had some problems in the past, but we are very prepared this time. We studied the weaknesses and strengths of the team, and we are aware of the physical strain from playing 2 matches in 3 days. So, it's not easy, and above all, when it's an international game, it's always a big challenge. And I hope everyone is ready to perform in a way that is befitting the image of our team.
And Watford have signed Cameroon defender Nicolas Nkunu on a deal until the end of the season. The 31-year-old arrives as a free agent. Nkunu won the Africa Cup of Nations in 2017. He's also featured for his country at 2 World Cups. Nigerian sprinter Blessing Okagbari has been charged with 3 offenses by the Athletics Integrity Unit. She was suspended during the Tokyo Olympics after testing positive for a human growth hormone following an out-of-competition test on the 19th of July. The 32-year-old later tested positive for another banned substance, which increases red blood cell count. She has also been charged for not cooperating with the AIU's investigation. Okagbari, Olympic long jump silver medalist in Beijing in 2008, denies all the charges. And that's all the sports, Zuhura.
Thanks very much, Mimi. Feel free to get in touch with me and some of the team on social media. I'm at Venus Nyota. Well, that's all from the program. I'm Zuhura Yunus. Goodbye.